I've clicked the
It's still okay. Well, it is still technically a practice session. Why don't you go ahead and connect? Let me see.
Yeah, so there we go. Now it's letting me in. Now we're gonna get a horrible echo.
Oops. Oh, good point. I'm gonna go ahead and mute yourself. Are you seeing like a weight screen or something? Oh, there you are. Okay, very good. All right. Oh, very good. Okay, because do you see and hear me? I'm gonna mute the phone.
Yeah, I'm gonna hang up the phone and call it to the back.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I think you're muted. Your audio is muted.
All right. Now I'm gonna put in my headphones.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. This is fine. Okay. This is fine. Okay. So it turns out we are in a practice session. Okay, that's very good. You want to know what? I didn't even realize that we could have that. So that's great. So I wonder if I could do the share screen. I should be able to. Only also, who can share? Oh, that's a control. Okay, there we go. I'm going to share that. Okay, so the poster is now sharing. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
So I was hoping my regenerative t-shirt was going to show up, but it's not. So I'm gonna go throw a collared shirt on because that would be better than a t-shirt that doesn't have any context.
Yeah, and what products are you going to show?
I've got milk from Alexander Eco Dairy with the Land of Market seal on it.
Nice.
I've got Union Snacks charcuterie crisps, and I've got my Timberland boot.
Nice.
I'll
Very
grab a
good.
Timberland wallet. I'll grab a Timberland wallet on the way by too. So
Very good.
I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
I'm back.
Very good. I've already started it, by the way.
Cool. So Seth, I was trying to remember all the places that you and I have traveled together. I know Paris. I know we did that trip in the Rockies like 10 years ago, right before the Boulder floods. And we did Paris, and I know we've been in Seattle together. I know there's like a gajillion places though. We did that trip in the Rockies like 10 years ago. Whoa, we got a cool echo for the Boulder.
Okay, that was my bad, because it was streaming to Facebook, and I was also
Playing back to you.
So it is streaming to Facebook. Okay, so that's good.
Cool.
All right, yeah, we've been all over. It's pretty hip.
Yep, for sure.
All
Hey,
right.
Carl, can these people talk to us? They can't, huh?
Yeah, I think they should. Yep.
I'm gonna say hi to Carl
No.
later.
I have to give them permission. So you see Carl there? Okay, we got 6 participants already. Very good. And the chat is already happening. Okay, very good. So in about a minute, I'll do the proper introduction. Carl raised his hand. Okay, it's time. All right, I'm going to stop the share. And there we are. Okay, well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soil for Climate webinar on this lovely Sunday. Today's webinar is titled Land to Market, Healing Earth and Climate with Regeneratively Sourced Products. And I gotta say, I love that title. And we are honored today to have as our special guest, Chris Kerston. Chris is the Chief Commercial Officer with the Savory Institute's Land to Market program. And if I may, I just want to quote now from the Land to Market title page on their website, quote, "We are giving a voice to the land and are the world's first verified regenerative sourcing solution for raw materials such as meat, dairy, leather, and wool." Just love it. Perfect. Okay. So without further ado, let me turn the floor over to Chris, and welcome so much to being part of this. The floor is yours. Feel free to make an introduction to the Land to Market program, you know, what it is, why you're excited about it. And then we'll start taking questions, you know, pretty quickly. And also I want to tell people that Chris has some products that he's going to show, a little show and tell here with some of the products that are part of the program. All right, Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thanks, Seth. I love what you guys are doing. I just want to kick that off. Like, Soil for Climate has just become like a powerhouse of believers. I love the momentum you guys have built. I love following the threads on Facebook. Like, it's a cool group. So it's an honor to be here today.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you did a pretty good job already, but I'm Chris Kerston with the Savory Institute. I've been with Savory just shy of 10 years now. Prior to that was a rancher and farmer in Northern California, where I still reside today. And my whole career has really been focused on creating new value streams for farmers and increasing their quality of life. The whole world's kind of awakening to this notion of the soil as the solution to all our problems. That really puts the private landowner, i.e. in most cases a farmer or a rancher, as the ambassador to that solution. And yet for all of human history, we've kind of relegated that demographic to the peasant class. So how do we change that? How do we elevate their status in society? And at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, align with consumers on shared values. We're at this point of all these amazing tipping points where consumers, I hate that word, but I haven't come up with a better one yet. But us, people, shoppers, even that's a very consumer driven word. But as we engage with our products, we're bringing our value to the table in a way that hasn't been done in the past. And so what we do at Land to Market is really focusing on bringing that food and fiber democracy to the next level. So a little
Chris,
history. Go ahead.
Sorry, food and fiber democracy.
Yeah.
Hello, brother. High five.
Right.
Did you? Is that a phrase that's been around, or did you just make that up just now?
Food democracy has been around for a while, and this notion of I was in direct to consumer sales for a long time from various different farms in Northern California, and that notion of like the best way to foster democracy is to meet eye to eye, to shake hands, to be on that person's property. But now the world is also kind of noticing the things that we wear also have a huge impact on the planet, also have an opportunity to connect on values and stories. And most of us don't have a clue where our stuff comes from. And this notion of fast fashion is no different than fast food 50 years ago, and we're dealing with all the same unintended consequences. So we are now spanning beyond just food and well into apparel and textile also.
Well, I just love the phrase food and fiber democracy.
It's not a bad one.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, continue, please.
Well, I think a little bit of background would be good for folks. I mean, especially if you're new to the Savory Institute. Alan Savory is the founder of the Savory Institute, one of the handful of founders that really spearheaded this notion of something called holistic management. So we really have kind of three offerings now. It's management, it's measurement, it's market differentiation. Management is the oldest. It's this 50-year-old approach to how we steward land. If you're not familiar in the conservation space, the whole world for the last 150 years has been racing to find the magic formula to heal land, the 10 steps. It's just like on the magazine cover, 7 steps to flatter abs or whatever. We're taking the same approach to healing land, and it's just as ridiculous and atrocious. And Alan really looked at the early part of that movement. He's 80 now, so he's been around for a good chunk of that this kind of paradigm that we've been swimming in. And he said, the same approach doesn't work everywhere. And most people can kind of get there pretty quickly. It's like, okay, different ecoregions, different climates, that doesn't really make sense. The same best management practice that might work in Vermont is not metabolized by the environment the same way in Nevada. Most people get that pretty quickly. And he went a step deeper with that and said, the whole context of that operation actually matters. So who the people running it are, what types of things that they're raising, what they want to do with their life, who the decision makers are, what resources you have to get there. You need a bespoke plan for success for each operation. We're never going to get the silver bullet list. And I think we all intuitively know that, but it's like, okay, but just give us a silver bullet list and then we'll kind of fine tweak it in the end. And his approach was saying, no, that context part is really, really important. So he developed a proactive planning strategy. And that's a huge piece to it because the complexity in agriculture is so massive. It's a very reactive business. Every day, I've run a number of farms. Every day you get up and it's like, okay, what fires am I putting out today? Now that I live in Northern California, that's a real term as well. What fires are we putting out today? But truly every day you get up and you're kind of in reactive mode. And the goal was to pivot and say, okay, let's embrace that complexity that is nature. We're never going to overcome that, but let's take a proactive approach at the same time. So he developed this triple bottom line. It's a buzzword: social, environmental, economic. Look at all the filters, embrace kind of what your whole context for the operation is, who's involved, what you can do to get there, and build a proactive plan. And so that was the legacy. That's been the 50-year work. We've operated on all 6 continents, promoting that approach. It's been wildly successful. Tens of thousands of ranchers around the world and farmers utilize that approach. And we've impacted tens of millions of hectares of land through that bespoke planning process, and kind of using principles of nature as the metronome to that. So this is kind of drive what's available in your plan. It's a lot like taking business strategies and moving it into the ecological world. Everybody gets that finance is complex. Nobody says, here's the 10 steps to success in finance. But that's kind of what we've been doing with kind of a reductionist approach in agriculture. And so we're kind of bringing that, what's common sense over here in other realms of complexity, and saying, okay, we got to do the same thing in agriculture. The next piece of the puzzle is measurement. We're huge believers in what gets measured, gets managed. And so we built ways to go and measure land health. And about 10 years ago, the market came to us in a pretty big way. And companies were like, okay, if you're working with all these people around the globe, how could we start to integrate that in our supply chains? And we said, well, to do that, we can't just kind of give them a green light because they've had training or they've worked with a consultant. And we're really against practice-based approaches. So if you think about like other certifications, they're very practice-based. It's like, if you don't till your land, you get 8 carbon gold stars. Like, what the hell is a carbon gold star? And so that was really frustrating to us, this notion of this kind of like extrapolative data or proxy data of like taking a practice and then trying to equate it across all these ecoregions to some magical mean average that's now going to be accepted as like your bonus points or your gold stars. And so we said, why don't we go out and develop a scientific protocol to actually measure ecosystem health? And let's look at the whole ecosystem. Let's not just look at carbon alone. That in itself is a form of reductionism, but let's look at the whole ecosystem, and that actually builds a stronger carbon model at the same time. And so we developed this ecological outcome verification protocol that looks at soil health, carbon, water, biodiversity, and ecosystem function. So that's now been developed and launched, and we've now done that process on 2.5 million acres globally, and again on all 6 continents. So it's a little bit newer. It's a newer kid on the block than the holistic management movement as a whole, or what's sometimes colloquially called regenerative grazing. But it is, excuse me, it is growing exponentially. And so we've got that EOV piece. And then my team is land to market, which really picks up from the farm gate forward and says, okay, how do we delineate the fact that yeah, there is a bad animal agriculture out there and it gets plenty of press and attention, but there's also an amazing nature-based animal agriculture out there movement that's getting net positive results, that's using nature as a model, that's stewarding the land, that uses good, kind of proactive approach to all this. How do we help the people and the masses delineate those two pieces? And a lot of that came from Alan Savory's TED Talk. When Alan did his TED Talk in 2013, I think it was, like the number one comment we got from people was, how do I engage? How do I get involved with this? And we were like, we're a business to business solution for agriculturalists. Like we don't really have anything for you. And we realized that's got to change. If we're really going to save the planet in the time frame that we have allotted, we have to empower the masses. And that's where that democracy comes in. We've got to be able to give them information to make good decisions. And right now, as you were talking about the tagline, we want to be the voice for the land in the marketplace. That was missing. That when you go into a store, there's nothing, none of the elevated claims spoke implicitly to land health. And we said, that's a place that we can play in, and we can help create that for those that's a strong value point for them, and they're going to make decisions on that. And so we launched Land to Market, which now connects that data that we collect on the ground to the consumer's values in the end. And we work with progressive brands and companies in the middle to create that flow through of, this is the product that came off the farm that's regenerating, and now you're going to engage with that and have the validity of knowing, really for the first time in history, to pick up a product and say, I know this product was grown in a way that healed land. And that's super exciting to us. And apparently it's super exciting to the rest of the world, because the growth for that has been exponential. We have brand partners come on every single week. We've launched thousands of products now into the marketplace that have the seal on pack And it's just an incredibly exciting time. And I'll just kind of close with this and we can open it up more dialogue. But I often kind of joke, but it's true that for 2 decades, it felt like we were pushing a boulder up a hill. And now we hit a tipping point somewhere in the last 18, 24 months. And it's like that boulder's rolling down the other side and we're chasing after it. And there has been a palpable shift in this movement in the last 2 years that is just incredible. And everybody in this space is feeling it. And it's just a really exciting time.
You know, I concur. I have noticed a difference. I think this would be a really good time actually to do a screen share. I want to show people the screen that you guys have on your website of the brands that are currently part of Land to Market. And then you can even talk about that if for a minute while I share the screen. So let's see, share screen. Yep, I believe that should do it. Okay, are you seeing the Land to Market customer page?
Yep. So just scroll down to the bottom there.
Okay. Well, anyway, even just right here, 1,000+ verified products, 70+ member brands, 2.5 million acres measured. That's profound.
It's been a wild ride. I'll tell you what, we're riding the rocket ship without a doubt. For sure.
Okay. And then let's see down here. Okay. So Thousand Hills. Yeah. I don't know. You want to just say a little something about like what we're looking at right here?
Yeah, so that there on the right and here on the package to the right of the American flag is, which is a global program, but to the right of the flag there is the seal. So there's a couple variations you'll see of the seal on the pack. It's usually either blue or that white outline. That's what you're looking for. And what that means is that product has been verified to be connecting to the animals that were actually raised on that land. So when we're talking meat, dairy, wool, leather, cashmere, that means that we've built a supply chain that has that transparency and traceability back to those farms. Those farms have been verified by the EOV process. And that means the $1 million word there is ecosystem services, but that means all the positive points on the land have gone up. So we're seeing an increase in soil health, carbon, water, biodiversity, and all of those kind of indicators are moving in a positive direction.
Right. And I love on this particular product, this is the Thousand Hills beef, obviously. Down on the left, there's this seal, AmericanGrassFed.org. Then there's the flag. And then on the right, it's landtomarket.global. I know it's not your program, but obviously there's a relationship. Just talk a minute as well about the American Grass-Fed seal here.
Totally. So yeah, there's a number of programs out there, and AGA is one of them that says, animals can only eat grass in their lifetime because that's maximizing their time out on the land eating grass usually. And AGA has one of the more rigorous standards on a grass-fed standard, and so they're phenomenal. We really see kind of where we start and stop is focused on that land health piece, and so. I raised, grass-fed, even organic meat for a number of years, and it was the best I could give my consumers at the time, but it didn't actually tell them the land got better. You can feed an animal organically and not graze well. You can feed an animal entirely on grass and degrade that landscape. And so we wanted to differentiate, again, that voice for the land and take the one step further. The way I think of it, and I don't want to put words into their mouth, but the way I think of it is that when you're buying something grass-fed, I think there's a component of welfare there. I think there's also a piece of nutrient density. What we know is that when you feed an animal grass-fed, you're going to have those conjugated linoleic acids be really high. You're going to have your omega-3, omega-6 ratio really high. Your vitamin A, D, K is going to be really high. That nutrient density piece is there. There's also probably a good chance that they are grazing well. We just don't know what it is. And so we don't see measurement as a function of like policing. We see it as a function of optimization. When you do a traditional practice-based audit,
wait, I have to stop you there because that's just another great zinger. We don't see measurement as policing. We see it as optimization. Oh, that's brilliant. Are you just like, are these part of the standard talk set? Or are you just firing on all cylinders on Sunday morning?
It's my Pendleton coffee mug. I guess is getting me.
No, I mean, that's
Me all
great.
razzed
So
up.
measurement
Yeah.
isn't policing, it's optimization.
Yeah, and
That's good. Yeah.
land to market was and ecological outcome verification. The ecological outcome verification, what we call EOV for short, is really the intel inside behind land to market. And land to market is the forward facing part of it. So farmers engage with EOV. When a farmer does a traditional practice-based audit, they're just reporting what they're doing. It's like reporting what you do to the IRS from a tax standpoint. You don't leave that day of your audit when the inspector comes out to your farm and kind of make sure you're in compliance. You don't leave knowing anything more about your operation than when you started. The beauty of EOV is we're creating dashboards for farmers that they're actually seeing, okay, what are the leading indicators that are going to trend me towards getting more carbon? What are the leading indicators that show that I'm going to be able to capture every raindrop and every snowflake that falls on my property, and be able to put it to its maximum utilization? So that's where, it's very different than your traditional audit. And if it's a farmer first focused program, we developed it as farmers ourselves and had been through a lot of these other programs. And for the right claim, it makes sense to do a practice-based one. But for land health, we said, number one, the world already thinks all animals are bad for the planet, regardless of the fact that every ecosystem on the planet mixes plants and animals together for synergy. We've just decided for food production, it's always bad all the time. And so if they're already thinking that way, we need to come with empirical data to the table to really help delineate that, no, this is happening and it's happening at scale. And there's a whole side of the story that isn't being told. And so we need that data to be really robust, but we also want that to be a function of helping the farmer to optimize their management along the way, that this isn't a one and done or a pass fail or a binary system, that we're on a journey of continuous improvement. And so that's the approach that we've tried to engender with this program.
Excellent. And so let's continue to scroll here. These are 4 videos that I've noticed you've put out. There's the story of meat, the story of dairy, the story of leather, the story of wool. Let's come back to these because I want to go right to, okay, there's the buying guide. Let's just go right to the product, the brand space here. Yeah. So this was a pretty impressive graph when I came upon it the other day. So these are all brands that are part of the land to market program, obviously, with some heavy hitters here, General Mills, Timberland, Uggs, Deckers. So it's interesting, the leather, the shoes, yeah. New Balance, yeah. And then of course, wool, and then, White Oak Pastures is beef. Yeah. So feel free to talk about any of these, but also, the whole General Mills one, anyway, I'll hold off on saying something. So feel free to speak to any of these brands and relationships that you have with them.
Yeah. So it's always, and I think you're touching a little bit on the delicacy here. It's always a little bit challenging to talk about a brand driven solution, because I think most of us, and myself included, have I'm just going to be kind of colloquial here, have kind of spent their life fighting against the man. Right. And it's like, this is what has been a huge part of the problem. I think some people go so far to pin all of the problem on that. I'm not in that camp, but certainly been a big part of the problem. And so like when I told my parents I'm going to start leading this relationship of connecting brands to good health, they were like, what are you talking about? Like, you are not the guy to be engaging with corporate America. But when we looked at this from a resource-based standpoint, and you zoom out to the space level, and you're staring down at planet Earth, and you look at the problems that we have to solve as a species to maintain civilization as we know it in all functional forms, how do we hit the goals we need to get without businesses acting as a force for good? I'm going to steal that from B Corp for a minute. Like, how are we going to get there without the marketplace being incentivized to really drive things forward. And so there's a lot we can do on the policy side. There's a lot that we can do on tax incentives. But right now, the marketplace is highly incentivized to move into this new realm. And I'll tell you, this is anecdotal, but when I speak to these C-suites, these chief officers at brands, most of them at some point take you aside and say, listen, we get it. We get that we're dinosaurs. We get that the paradigm is shifting, not only from a value standpoint, but literally a planetary standpoint, that we are not going to be around for our shareholders. We're not going to be around for our own jobs if civilization doesn't survive, if humanity doesn't make it. And so they're looking at the writing on the wall going, okay, it's the Titanic, we're sinking. We've got to send out some speedboats, some lifeboats at the same time and figure out how to fix this. And they're really investing in a way that I haven't seen before. And I don't mean investing financially in us. I mean, changing the way that their businesses are being done, modeling what the future will look like. And the thing that probably is the most exciting to me, I know the drive there is from consumers. I know that woke consumers get it. But sometimes it's a little bit of an oligarchy in today's modern world, that it's like, well, we'll just steamroll you and give you fewer options and, tell you that anything else that's more boutique doesn't scale. But what we're seeing is that the finance sector has really gotten this in a big way. And so, Wall Street has kind of figured out that, okay, if there's volatility at raw material sourcing, which is their way of saying farms, that volatility ripples its way up through the value chain into the brand itself and their equity in that asset. And so they're saying, if you want our venture capital, if you want our revolving lines of credit, if you want access to our dollars, you have to hit environmental targets. And so it's a little bit of a wild, wild west, because defining what an environmental target is a challenge. And so there's all sorts of kind of like internal business to business greenwashing happening that people are like, oh, well, I'm setting my own target and here's how I'm hitting it. And it's a little bit hokey. If you read any of the like financial papers, all of that is starting to say, that's not good enough. It's an early step in a paradigm shift that you have this Wild West phase. But like Wall Street Journal almost weekly, if not every 2 weeks for sure, has an article about how the alphabet soup is CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG. Those metrics for how you measure your impact are getting tighter and more consistent. And governments are going to come to the table next. But right now, God love them or not, finance is leading that table. And they're the ones that are saying this has got to be a change, because they're just seeing it from a pragmatic standpoint. We're all not going to be around otherwise. So that was the longest intro ever to say, we work with big brands and small brands. Our approach is to say, we're fairly agnostic to your past. If you're showing up and are going to be a force for good, we're going to hold you accountable to that. So if you're a big brand that's everybody's heard of and it's the brand they love to hate, if you're still willing to say we're going to put in the hard work and evolve our brand, we will still come alongside and be a resource to that, because we need all the help we can get as Team Humanity. So that's our approach. So probably is good to highlight a couple of the brands. Epic Provisions, if anybody follows the Savory Institute knows, we've had a long-standing partnership with them. They're one of our oldest partners. The founders of that organization, before General Mills acquired it, were very, very close in the early days of setting up the groundwork for what EOV and Land to Market were going to become, and funded a lot of that work as well. Zooks is a pet food company. Union, I've actually got a Union product today. So these are also one of our oldest partners. So these are charcuterie crisps.
Okay. Hold on, I'm going to stop the share so that they can get a better image of that.
Well, hold on. We'll go back real quick.
Go back
I'll
to the
stick
share.
to the script.
Okay. No problem.
I was jumping ahead. I got excited. It happens.
But
in terms of like other brands, as people are trying to figure out how to navigate this space, you mentioned wool. Eileen Fisher is a great partner for wool. It's a women's clothing wear company here in the States, and like 80% of their wool is now coming through the Land to Market program, being sourced out of South America. Kering Group is a parent company, so a lot of people don't know it, but that's Gucci, Balenciaga, Saint Laurent. We're very big in the luxury space. On that front, we also work with like Burberry and Tapestry and Coach, you name it. So a lot happening in the leather space. The more lifestyle daily wear is like your Timberland, Deckers, UGG. Force of Nature is a fresh meat company started by the same folks that started Epic. And they've now gone on and done their own thing. And so they're doing really cool, innovative stuff around fresh meat. We've got a lot of like leather craft people. So Aram is a small footwear company that's a startup. Abaya is another small footwear company that's starting up. One that gets me really excited is that this is now moving into health and wellness. And so we have 2 companies that use tallow-based skincare, kind of bringing back the old base of skincare was always kind of an animal product. And it was often pork or beef. And so we have 2 companies that are playing in that space. So that's Fauna and Summer Solace. Both of them are doing amazing products, all coming through Land to Market. A lot of bison products. Gleason Bison is a favorite of mine. And she actually, the woman, Sarah Gleason, used to work for Land to Market and Savory Institute. She's a rock star. Serenity Kids is a animal-based baby food. So bringing that nutrient density to kids. It's the bottom left there. So tons of cool brands, but we do work with big and small alike. And then this is probably a good time to also just kind of put a pin in. We are starting to work with cropping supply chains, but they have to integrate animals into that. And so we have done some hemp and CBD products, Mariah Vineyards. We're not putting a ton of energy to that currently, but for those that find us and it is a good fit, we do move forward in that regard. But most of our focus to date has been around animal agriculture, helping people understand that, move forward in that regard. So that's a big one for us.
Okay, and I'm going to stop the share now so you can show some things. Let's start to take some questions.
Yeah, so I go ahead.
I think you can see the same questions I see from Cebus. Do you see that one?
No.
So someone named Cebus asked, do you see a Q&A?
Oh, I'm on the chat one. Sorry, let me go to the Q&A one.
There's a couple good questions there from Cebus.
How do I get to the Q? Oh, here it is. There, sorry. Sorry, it's been a minute since I've done one of these. What's the cost for a small brand to get involved with Land to Market, not including the EOV monitoring? So the EOV monitoring is the process the farm goes through. We don't make any money on the EOV monitoring. That currently is offered at cost or subsidized cost, depending on part of the world and what money we have to get available for that. I'll tell you, our internal goal is to get to a place where farmers don't have to pay for the EOV at all in a farmer first approach. We're tired of farmers doing things right, having to pay to prove their innocence. So that's our drive, is to move beyond our current business model and get to a place to where farmers don't ever pay anything for that part of it. The brands we base on, it's a tier-based approach. So bigger brands will pay a higher amount, smaller brands will pay a smaller amount. That's our proxy for 2 things. 1, how much of our resources they can take, common sense kind of, business modeling. But 2, it's how much impact that they can have. And so we want brands that are larger to not do a one and done and not say, oh, I'm going to launch one little capsule line and be done with this. We want them to be financially invested enough that it's in their best interest to keep going. And so for big brands, for billion-dollar brands, our sticker price is not small. It's a big sticker price because we want to use that as a mechanism to incentivize change. For small brands that are just getting started, that are very values aligned, but don't necessarily have a lot of scale yet, the cost is very low. And we literally have brands that are smallest tier, they just pay a percentage of their revenue. And some brands are working with us before they've ever had a purchase order, before they've ever made a transaction. And the program's entirely free to them until they start to make those sales. And then as they grow, they can hit higher tiers and the cost savings.
So you tailor it. I mean, it's like holistic management. You tailor it for the circumstances, what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Listen, there are some great questions coming in both in the chat and in the Q&A. I trust you can read them as well as I can, but let me throw out my own question. I have to know what you're doing with General Mills.
So General Mills, most of that project, and we're scoping out the potential of doing some more with them, and I'll that's all inside of our NDA. So there's not anything I can speak to on that today. But the public facing project is through Epic. So they own Epic. And so that's where most of the work is happening with General Mills. And like I said, we're doing some exploratory stuff with them behind the scenes on other categories and other product lines that we can work with, but nothing public on that yet currently.
Okay. And why don't you do, well, anyway, you can see the questions in the chat. Jay Montgomery has a question. Anne has a question. And then Janet in the Q&A has a question, but I also want to get to a little show and tell here. So can we spend a few minutes doing that?
You want to do show and tell first or question?
Yeah, let's do a little show and tell.
Sure. Okay. So Seth asked me to bring some of the products that I just have in my house on a daily basis. So this is a wallet from Timberland. I think we've got 10 or 11 SKUs with them now. Their first was the Korma boot. So these are my personal boots. This was the men's Korma that was their first to launch. We've got lines in Europe, Canada, and US in both men's and women's with them. And it was really a groundbreaking one from a leather standpoint, because leather is a waste product of the meat industry. So farmers don't get any recognized value for that. Most of them pay a disposal fee for their hides to the abattoir. And then it goes to this long, dark, amorphous supply chain, and nobody ever knows where it goes. And then it might turn into a Coach handbag on the other side. And it's like totally disparate, the way the supply chain was on that. So Timberland was our first partner to do a leather project at scale, to say, let's work with the farmers, create a bespoke supply chain where we can trace it through and keep that value, and then actually pay the farmers a new value stream they never got paid for before. So they for the first time in history, at least in modern history, to my knowledge, at any sort of scale, farmers got paid for their hides through this project with Timberland. So their first sourcing was through that Thousand Hills that you showed earlier. That cooperative of growers was the first place that they started doing that with. And now that we've expanded that to other regenerative grazers around the world, but we started there. But moving on, speaking of looking for the seal, this is a great one. So this is Alexander Eco Dairy, based in California. They now have, they're pretty widespread in the West, and I think they now have some grocers that carry them nationally. I think Whole Foods is one of them, but they've gone big on the seal. So you can see the seal is really predominant on there. So that's what you're looking for.
Certified regenerative. I just want to time out and acknowledge that. Can you hold that even a little more to the camera so everyone can really see that? Certified regenerative, land to market.
Yeah,
this is like a fantasy. I mean, really, like I said, no, I mean, like you said, for 11 years, it's been 11 years that I've been involved with, the Savory movement, or regenerative grazing movement, or soil as a climate solution movement. And yeah, I mean, it's just been, like you say, just trying to push the boulder up the hill.
Yeah,
and then here we are with a product in a supermarket with a Savory spin-off organizational label, land to market, certified regenerative. I just love it. I will want you to say a little more about what some of the variables are that you're measuring that's in the what did you call it, the dashboard, and maybe even if there's a screen of the dashboard, but let's get to some more questions now, if we could.
Let me do one more product real quick. So this one unions, it's kind of a fun one, because we do a lot of R&D stuff, and kind of like, we don't, the brands do, but we're working in new categories. And so this was one, they wanted to make animal products coming from healthy landscapes more accessible, and so they created a crisp out of a pepperoni, basically. So you've got your charcuterie, and they're turning that into a crisp, so it's crunchy like a cracker. These are amazing to take on the go. You can have a cheese wine.
Is that like a jerky kind of thing? Is that what that is?
It's not like a biltong or a jerky. Like it's like a charcuterie, like a salami that gets sliced thin and dried to where it's crunchy like a cracker. And these are amazing. I know for people that do like keto or paleo or primal, it's really hard to find a crunchy texture in your diet. This is a great way to do it, other than like celery. This is a cool way to do it. So anyway, that's a personal favorite of mine. And like, it's just super fun that I went from like innovating management on the ground and like creating fun farms to now getting to work with brands that are doing innovative things in the marketplace.
Yeah, this is really very encouraging. All right, so let's see.
Let's do Janet real quick. So our Butcher Box and Crowd Cow online companies participating in your program. So I'll just say we're in talks with all sorts of companies like that. I mean, our program is literally exploding overnight. We have new brands coming to the table every single week. But where I would start is a more direct from the farmer option. So I would look at those like White Oak Pastures. Not only do they sell beef, they sell about every category of protein available. I'd look at Thousand Hills. They have a number of categories of protein. I'd look at Richard's Grass Fed. That's for a US context. Those would be the places that I would start and order direct from them. Now, those types of farmers might eventually feed into some of these other branded programs that you talk about. And I know some of the growers do currently, but they may not have a way to segregate that, or they may not be tracking it. All of that will come in due time. But I always say, whenever you can, buy closer to the farm and direct from the farm whenever possible. So I would say start with those brands for sure. And they are already all 100% in compliance.
Excellent. Why don't you just grab a few more questions while you're at it?
Let's do Ed's. So are you including those using cover crop grazing? Absolutely. That's actually how you would get the crop to be eligible, would be to have the animals either grazing off green residue. So you're grazing off a cover crop, or cleaning up some sort of crop residue afterwards, or some sort of concurrent grazing like we do in vineyards and other certain vine crops and orchards. And then you just, on that one, you're addressing more of a food safety side of it. And it doesn't have to just be grazing. We're looking to just get people to remember that animal impact is really important in nature, from everywhere from the desert to the tundra, jungles, everything in between. Nature uses plants and animals together. It's only humans that are like, nope, plants go over there, animals go over there. They're very different systems, and we're going to ignore all the unintended consequences come from doing that. So that's what we're trying to get, is to bring that back together. So there's all sorts of ways to do that. We've been trying for 18 months now to get a pilot going on cotton in India, where they're not even harvesting those animals, but they are using them to graze off cover crops. They're doing companion plantings, and they're using it in crop residue. They're trying to grow the cotton more as a perennial, which has other added benefits to be able to hit those metrics for EOV. And we just can't get resources into the country in light of what COVID has done and lockdowns and things like that. But those are exactly the kind of pilots and projects that we're working on in cropping.
Excellent. And speaking of cropping, I want to ask about agroforestry. This is becoming a big topic. It's always been a big topic anyway, but in Soil4Climate, we're getting more involved now. One of our very good colleagues is really strong into agroforestry, and particularly in the dryland areas like in the Sahel. So that whole part of just below the Sahara Desert is known as the Sahel. And so we need to even be doing sort of tree agriculture and grazing, and not just like cropping and grazing, but even tree agriculture and grazing. What are your thoughts about that? And do you see anything on the horizon for EOV or land to market in that space?
Yeah, and I've been in that realm a long time. So my background, the farm that I spent the longest with managing was a couple of 1,000 acres of kind of mixed use land, where we had 600 acres of 100-year-old olive trees. We had 50 acres of stone fruits, 50 acres of citrus, and then all sorts of little small blocks of like pears, persimmons, avocados, you name it. We grew it, and we picked fresh fruit every single day of the year. And then we grazed livestock underneath that. So sheep and the cows did the mowing, goats handled the invasive weeds, chickens debugged and fertilized. We cut our fuel usage by about 85% because the animals did jobs that other inputs used to do. And then we actually increased the soluble sugar, something called bricks, in our fruits when we had animals come in and go through those landscapes. So your marketability went up, your input costs went down, and you got more crops per acre. So my apricot field may not, or a block may not have been the most productive apricots in the world growing this way when I compared just apricot production to apricot production. But when I compared it to everything else I was growing, it was incredibly more productive. And this is where some of those arguments of can you feed the world in a nature-based approach kind of get screwy, because we apply reductionism to that. So I'm super familiar with this notion of food forest, and then been getting more into the agroforestry, silvopasture kind of approach to things. Our family went through the wildfire in Paradise, California 3 years ago in 2018, lost our home in November, like managing forest fires and bringing back browsers for that, which is basically goats and deer, to be able to help manage that biologically rather than having the debate of should we burn and should we masticate, should we use all these different mechanical inputs, and maybe glyphosate's okay because the forests are worse. Bringing biology back into that has been something that I've been really working on. But I think what's a little bit loaded in your question there, though, is this kind of like love for trees. The zeitgeist has just like literally hugged trees for the last 2 or 3 decades. And I think trees have their place. There's nothing wrong with having a love affair with trees and forests, but sometimes there are places where it's never going to jump that successional cycle and go from bare beach sand to forest overnight, and may never have the climate to support a forest. So again, I'm going to come back and beat that drum. This is who we are, of a context-based approach. I don't think any of these are moralistic decisions. I think grassland can sequester carbon and heal ecosystems. I think forests have their place to do that. I think there's savannas that are super magical when that makes the right sense in places like California and Spain. And I think food forests in places that are less brittle, more the eastern US, east of the Mississippi, make a ton of sense when you're not having to pump irrigation water in to do that. I think all of these things have their synergies and can be put together, but it needs to be done in a context-specific approach and not labeled as like the good thing or the bad thing, and rather let's embrace all of it and apply it where it makes sense for the context.
Yeah, the Sahel in Africa is the classic savanna of mixture of grassland forest. And so people are talking about, growing chestnuts there. Well, that's great. We should be able to have commercial chestnuts there, and we should be able to have commercial, goat and sheep, at least, if not also cows. So that can be something we'll work on in the future. But let me get to, there's actually a perfect setup question here for EOV, and I do want you to show the dashboard. Anne says, to what extent are universities involved in EOV? And let's also use that as a segue to show the EOV dashboard.
Yeah, I don't have the dashboard up. We can do a future session where we do that. We can show what that reporting looks like. But in terms of university involvement, it was done with rangeland ecologists around the world and universities around the world. And so we had a team of rangeland ecologists in Argentina. Michigan State University is a Savory hub and was super involved in taking the work that was done out of Argentina and taking it globally. Texas A&M and Richard Teague were involved in this. We had some researchers in South Africa, some researchers in Australia that were involved in pilots. Lincoln University in New Zealand was involved, and in the Nature Conservancy. So it was a pretty wide conglomerate or consortium of academic partners to kind of push on things and take it to the next level. Basically, where we started in holistic management, we had been teaching ranchers how to look at the leading indicators of land health for a long time. We needed to get to empirical values on lagging indicators, and we had to get to scalable statistical relevance, is basically the fancy way of saying we had to get something that was cost effective, that still gave us the type of outcome-based data that we were looking for. And so all of those people played a different role in kind of bringing a piece of that solution. And there's ongoing review that happens in that process as well. And then we have a group of what we call master verifiers. They're also involved in kind of the quality assurance side of that ecological outcome verification, and they can push and influence on how processes get done and evolved over time as well. So we're always bringing that that top shelf kind of gold level standard of data collection and scalability.
And even though you can't show the dashboard now, what are some of the variables that are in it?
Yeah, so again, we're going to be looking at soil health. We're going to be looking at that sequestered carbon. We're going to be looking at water infiltration and soil water holding capacity, and biodiversity. Biodiversity has been one of the hardest to scale and to create a solution for without bringing technology in. Part of scaling is we need to be able to do this in all parts of the world. So these kind of early versions of EOV have to be equally deployable in Central Australia, Outer Mongolia, Western US, places that are far from resources, that you're not going to get a backhoe in and dig a pit, that drones may not be available for the economics of that region. Satellite imagery can be brought in, but we all know it's the global data sets are pretty low resolution. And so we needed a way to scale training people that have skills in this field to be able to go and collect data off the land, send it off to labs, do some qualitative scoring on the land while they're there, and kind of wrap that all up together. So biodiversity is one of the harder ones to get. We do have a respiration protocol for biodiversity in the soil. It's not ubiquitous everywhere, so it's not in every standard that we deploy everywhere, where a huge part of what we're bringing is consistency. So that baseline EOV doesn't have that currently, but we do plant analysis and insect analysis on the biodiversity one. We've been part of a couple of pilots to look at more ways to catalog wildlife through like remote cameras. But again, that brings a scalability solution when you're trying to do that in Ghana, versus in California. And so getting access to those types of tools and materials, and now with the world supply chains, makes that even more challenging. So biodiversity is a fun one. It's one place that we do use the tiniest bit of extrapolative data that you can look at biodiversity of what's happening in plant species. And there are some indexes that say we would expect to see about this much equivalent biodiversity in animal species as well. And so we do use that as a factor that we look at in our dashboard reporting back to the farmers.
So are there basically four, you said soil health, carbon, water infiltration, and biodiversity? Is that it, sort of those four?
I think there's about 25 leading indicators that get looked at. So a leading indicator is something like how quickly dung decomposes. So that's telling the producer, okay, what's the metabolism of my soil, of my ecosystem? How quickly during the growing season and the non-growing season is the microbes able bugs and stuff able to reach up, pull that down, and bring it down under the soil? Or do we have this white crusty cap that's 5 years later still here? So that's a leading indicator, and you can find correlations between things like how quickly your dung decomposes to how much carbon you're sequestering. So when we measure the carbon, we can look and show the farmer, this is one to pay attention to day to day. We're measuring both. We're not going to throw away the measurement. We're measuring both, but that leading indicator is really important. So there's like 25 leading indicators that we look at, and then there's like half a dozen lagging indicators that we look at. Those lagging indicators are the ones that typically get sent off for the laboratory analysis, that gets sent out and done a soil profile or panel on.
So I'm interested in the infiltration. How do you measure infiltration rates?
Yeah, it's the classic old, I think NRCS probably took it the widest. You put a ring in the ground, you put a piece of mylar or plastic, you pour a set amount of water in, you remove it, you time how long it takes to go in, and then you do it again. So you're doing it pre-saturation and post-saturation and measuring how long it takes to infiltrate. And that's been used widely in rangeland and crop settings.
Is there on the website somewhere, either on the Land to Market or on the Savory Institute, is there a place where those 20 indicators are listed?
Yeah, so if you go to savoryinstitute.org, or it's actually savory.global now. You go to savory.global,
yeah,
and then go to programs. It's under EOV or under Land to Market to get to EOV. But if you go to the EOV page, and I can put it here in the chat in a second, there's a PDF that says download this PDF. You don't actually have to download it, just click on it and it opens up, and you have the whole protocol for EOV is spelled out there.
I think I'm going to just do a quick share on that right now, just so,
Do it.
What the hell, just so people can obviously they can go on their own, but I want to just do a quick share on it as well. So here's savory.global, and this is their EOV page.
So now scroll down, and there a little further, right there on the left. So click download that PDF.
Right there. Okay,
yeah.
I see. Okay, that's all right. I'm not going to do it right now, but this is where people can go.
Yeah.
I'll grab this.
And it will just open up in a new tab, and then you've got it right there. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, that's excellent. So let's see, we have, 9 minutes left. Let me stop the share. Actually, hang on one second. This will all happen very quick. Look how fast that was. Okay, I upgraded my computer so things go faster now. All right, so yeah, so here's the EOV document.
This is like ideology. And then if you go down further, you can see it spells out how we put in our transects, what
EOV
things
metric
get measured, which
summary,
years. So like those
baseline,
leading,
long-term. Yep.
these
Oh, here
leading
we go.
indicators are here: live canopy abundance, living organism,
Oh, very
contextually
good.
desirable species, bare soil, soil capping, wind erosion, water erosion. Those are all leading indicators. If we go down a little further,
Very good. Very good. Okay, this is good. I'm glad to see this. Yep.
yeah, so you can see the intervals of what gets measured when. Some of the lagging indicators don't get measured every year. Keep going. And so then it talks about how we normalize for ecoregions. And then further down, it actually shows how we set up our transects, what gets measured on transects. This is work we did with TNC to how to normalize for ecoregions. So each ecoregion gets calibrated. They had already done a ton of work on ecoregion definitions around the globe. And we talk about states in transition. So you're gonna basically calibrate what you would expect to see in a savanna different than what you would expect to see in a tundra. Those wouldn't exist in the same ecoregion. A planted pasture versus a savanna in the same ecoregion still have to get calibrated separately. It's not going to be worlds apart, but they still need to be fine-tuned.
Right. And now this area here that's sort of pinkish, I guess that's here, fields, woods, savanna. This is, and then the orange area, grass, shrubs, and shrubs, tree. This area in here, there's huge opportunity.
Totally.
You
We're
know,
doing a big project there with Heifer International across the Sahel.
actually, that was a question. Or maybe it was in the chat area where someone said, what's your global impact? What countries are currently in an EOV program other than the United States?
Those that have hubs, I think we're in 27, 28 countries, something like that, that have holistic management training set up in their country and have a Savory hub. There's more than that have holistic management training, but an actual hub, like a field office, basically, I think it's 27, 28 countries. Those that are doing EOV, it's currently about half that. I think we're in 14 countries currently. So we have the big everyday regions that I'm working on, because we have a number of projects in those countries, are New Zealand, Australia, Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Canada, US, South Africa. We've got a number of projects across Europe. I'll just kind of treat that as one region. But we've got probably 20 to 30 big projects going on in Europe as well. So those are kind of like mainstays for us, where we have multiple projects going on. This is on that like transition model. So what kind of energy it takes to take something out of grassland into brush and into forest in different ecoregions. It'll take more energy to go from the different ones. This is probably more than the average person needs, but it's all here for those that want to dig.
Okay. All right. Great. And yeah, no, this is a good document. It's good for me to see this too. And you know, we're it's already 1:55. Well, it's different time, different hour for different people, but we got 5 minutes left. You know, I want to ask, I'll stop the share here. You know, you do have some major brands now. And I'm just wondering, has it showed up yet in any of the major marketing? Is there print or TV marketing that says, hey, check out our regeneratively sourced product?
Yeah. So it was funny because initially we had to get kind of a critical mass of companies before we could go strong into retail and into media. And so this last year has really been focused heavily on those two pieces. So we now have a number of collaborations with major retailers around the globe, because they have dozens of products they can point to in the store and say, these products qualify, these products are doing the right thing, these products help us hit our own internal environmental impact goals. And so that was a huge part of it. And the same thing on the media. You can only sell the single story so many times before it's like, okay, we need a critical mass of more stories to tell, a broader Rolodex. And that's been hit. Was pretty excited that we got, it was actually one of our smaller brands, but got them on the Today Show in December talking about regenerative. And that was Rep Provisions, which is actually started out of a Savory Institute hub in Oklahoma. Really cool products, fresh meat, packaged meat. They were doing initially like a meat stick that you dip in nut butter. They've got popsicles that are made out of bone broth. And like, it sounds weird and gross and like, oh, they're just trying to be edgy.
Popsicles made out of bone broth. That's another
They're
one.
delicious.
Oh
Like,
my
it's
God,
incredible. So they were a cool company. So they got on the Today Show. And then like the big players are doing it. You'll see it's different in apparel than food, but you'll see like Timberland has products that like in the package has like, this came from regenerative leather. It talks about that program. Food always wants to use the seal because they get synergy from the seal. So they want to put the seal on package. That's a huge driver for them to get that seal. So like Applegate just launched the Do Good hot dog, which all came from verified regenerative meat sources. And now we're about to launch the Do Good burger with them as well. And so all of it talks about land to market and regenerative and all their marketing collateral. But yeah, these days, a lot of what we do is those marketing campaigns and helping the brands operate with consistency of what the hell does regenerative really mean, and making sure that we're saying it the same way every time and that we're clear about what it is and clear about what it isn't. And I think we've seen other elevated claims previously not do that well. They let consumers think they were everything to everyone. And we're going, no, we're going to be a voice for the land. And that's where we start and stop respectively. And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to do that part really, really well. And there's all sorts of other bolt-on things that people are already doing great things in those spaces. And let's continue to let that move forward and then create that democracy of values again.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about a company like Timberland. I mean, obviously, they get superstars, and rappers, A-list celebrities to model their shoes. So, when are we going to see that? When are we going to see an A-list celebrity, rocking their Tims, but they're the land to market certified Tims, when, that level, Super Bowl halftime.
I think we're right there, man. I can't point to specifics until we're doing it, but I think this is an incredible year of excitement. And the thing that our team holds onto white knuckle, I mean, we're not going to let this become a greenwash play. It has to be with the validity behind it. So superstardom, awesome, if it's got the validity behind it. And that's what we're driving forward. So I think that era of superstardom is coming. I think that will be its own Wild West that we'll all have to navigate. But it is super exciting to see. And I think we're right on the cusp of that. I think in this year, we'll start to see some milestones like that we haven't seen before. Certainly there are celebrities and influencers and stars that are interested in this. And it's finally becoming safe enough for them to be able to say, yeah, there's enough grassroots people that this isn't just me operating out on a ledge. There's a group of people to support me, and this is not so boutique anymore. It's going mainstream in a hurry.
Yeah, well, listen, we're at the hour now. So I just want to say thank you for being with us. And I'm so excited about this. I really want to see the stuff in the supermarket. I want to go to the supermarket and see the label and get people talking about it. And so let's stay in touch about this. At some point, if you want to do an EOV, a more EOV focused, maybe a bit more wonky, about what the indicators are and look at the dashboard, we could do that too.
That'd be fun. Yeah. There's smarter people than me that would fill that role well, but that, I think that'd be super cool. And I want to thank you. What you and Carl have been just fighting for forever is awesome. That you got bit by this bug and became, chief evangelist is just awesome. And the Soil4Climate community. I mean, it's super cool that people care about this, and we're not going to make it if they don't. So I want to thank you all, and particularly you and Carl. You guys are just Awesome. So thank you
All
for
right.
having me
Well,
on. It's
well,
an honor.
thank you. Well, as you know, our movement sort of started, with you and Savory. So it's all, a connectivity. Okay, buddy. Thanks so
Cool.
much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.